Panel up. This is a Sunday morning where it's a little different format, so we want you to be comfortable. There's a lot of visitors here, but we want you to be comfortable and just really enjoy our time together this morning. So panelists, you can come forward. So I'm going to have a few comments before I introduce the panelists this morning. So our subject this morning is hospitality. I mentioned that already. But this really comes out of our theme for this year. And if you look at the verse on the left, it says, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." What is fishing for men look like? You know, hospitality is a huge part of fishing. And we're going to talk about some personal experiences this morning. We want you, if you have questions, save them till the end. We'll just ask you to slip up your hand if you have a question for one of these esteemed panelists this morning. And we'll get a mic to you and get those questions answered as best we can. If you ask a question, I'm going to give the right of the panel to say, "I don't know." But that's when the esteemed panelists on either side of that person can jump in. So we're looking forward to this morning. I was just thinking a lot about what hospitality is. And so it says, "Follow me." So we're following Jesus. And I had to think about what Jesus did to practice fishing. Hospitality was in everything he did, at least everything that I can think of that was significant. You know, Jesus, when he healed the blind man, he met his deepest need. When he met the woman at the well, he met her deepest need. When the woman who was caught in adultery was about to be stoned, he met her deepest need. When the woman who touched the hem of his garment did that, for the first time in a long time, somebody actually understood what she was going through. Jesus met her deepest need. That's my definition of hospitality. It's meeting people's deepest need. So we're going to get into the panel this morning. These guys are going to help me with a discussion, and we're really excited. I want to introduce the panel. So right here, the lovely young lady is Dorcas Martin. Her husband, George McPherson, is right beside her. Actually, sorry, that's his secret alias, Loyal Martin, okay? And then we got Mark Stolzfus, and he has been my cell group leader and has shown hospitality in many different ways in our group. Unfortunately, there's supposed to be a seat right beside him, but we're dealing with some sick kids this morning that Abby can't be with us this morning. Disappointed with that. Abby, I don't know if you've noticed how many things she organizes on WhatsApp for meals and things like that. So we're missing an important part of our panel, but we're gonna try and get through it this morning. Then we got Ange, and Ange Esch is part of our panel, and Jeremy Esch as well. So we're gonna dive right in. Here we go. Actually, before I dive, I just want to tell you how we're doing this morning. Hospitality comes in many different forms, just like Jesus did. But we're going to talk about hospitality to a believer, hospitality to a stranger, hospitality in a crisis, and the fourth is hospitality to those in need. So we're going to start with hospitality to a believer, and a couple of verses. 1 Peter 4:8 says, "Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling." I don't know why God put that in, or why it was written that way. Offer hospitality without grumbling. I can grumble sometimes when I have to offer hospitality. So that's why he put it in there probably for me. And the second verse is Romans 12:13. Share with the Lord's people who are in need, practice hospitality. So this is just not something that we just came up as a good thing to do. It's very biblical, and it's an incredible way to meet the deepest needs of people. So my question for you all this morning, and I'm actually going to start with Loyal, but I'll ask a number of you the same question. When has an act of your hospitality turned into an actual blessing for you?
A couple of weeks ago, my niece from Grantsville, Maryland, was at our house. She is a writer, an author. Anyhow, she was speaking at Mennonite Life. She stayed at our house, she and her 2 kids. Anyhow, she went home, and then a day or 2 later, I get a text from my sister saying, Lucy just loved the peace and coziness that she received at our house. And anyhow, that just kind of, that's one way that I felt blessed in just reaching out. And I know that was family, but still, it's all the same.
Mark, same question. When has an act of hospitality been a blessing to you?
Yeah, let me tell you a story about our neighbors. When we got married 15 years ago, we moved into a house in Christiana, and our next door neighbors are 100 feet away. An old couple, Jerry and Jackie. Sweet old couple. He's a little gruff, so it takes a little bit to get to know him. But the way we blessed them with hospitality, and then they blessed us, let me tell you a little story. So let me preface this a little bit. I'm up here because of my wife, Abby, so it's too bad that she can't be here. She's a people person. She's extroverted. I'm an introvert. And so a lot of people don't actually give me life, but I like to have people in small quantities. Anyway, so the story about our neighbors. Abby loves to make food, and she loves to bless people. So we started just taking them food. We take them food Sunday night. We make soft pretzels. Throughout the week. They didn't even come into our house for a meal. I don't think they ever did in 15 years. They ate out by the pool a time or 2. Jerry is probably kind of like me. He likes to be by himself more, so we would take the food to them. So we did this for years, 15 years. Like even our small group would come over for Christmas, and we had some wonderful smoked tenderloin, and we made them a plate, took it over for them that evening. So Jerry's a kind of a gruff old man, and one of the boys hit 2 golf balls through their fence. His plastic fence made nice holes in it, and so he came over and talked to the boys and really laid into them about respecting people's property. Scared them pretty good, and so then they came and talked to me, and I went over to Jerry and apologized. And Jerry said, he said, I'm sorry for getting so upset. He said, everyone's mad at me now. My wife is even mad at me. You guys are probably mad at me. She said, I'm never going to get cookies and food again. But it didn't stop. I promise. I told him, we'll fix the fence, and you'll keep getting cookies. The way it blessed us, we moved this spring. And they're like family to us. And gruff old Jerry, on Friday, he was sat by his window where he always sits. And he said, I'm going to sit here and watch the boys come off the bus one last time. So that's how hospitality for 15 years turned a gruff old man into family. That's my story.
Yeah, I was going to say we're going to need some applause there. And same question, when has your act of hospitality turned into a blessing to you?
So I also have a story of our neighbors. I think it was 2 years ago for Jeremy's birthday. I wanted to surprise him with a bunch of friends and Mexican street tacos for the meal. And I wanted them to be authentic. So we live in the city, and we have a bunch of Hispanic neighbors. And so I decided to go knock on one of their doors and ask them to help me cook a meal or help me figure this out. And so I told them what I needed, and they said they'll go grocery shopping with me. So they took me grocery shopping, and then had me in their home that afternoon to help cut up the meat and the cilantro and all the things. And then that evening, after everyone was there, they came over and helped serve it. And I feel like that really broke down walls between us. And since then, they had us over for birthday parties and cookouts. And it feels like there are Hispanic grandma and grandpa on the street there. We feel really safe with them. And yeah, we're really grateful for them.
That's awesome. So we're going to shift the question a little bit, Jeremy. This question is name a time when you actually have been blessed by hospitality. Not your act of hospitality, but somebody blessed you.
So when we were getting ready to host the refugee family from Syria, I think in my mind we were supposed to be the ones hosting. So me and Ange and Janet picked them up at the airport along with some other CWS staff and took them to the hotel where they'd be staying for the next little bit. And so they literally came from Syria and came into Lancaster Airport, and then we picked them up and took them to the hotel. And within we were literally helping them bring their stuff into the hotel room, and they were inviting us into their hotel room, telling us to sit down and feeding us. I don't know if this was the first time, but they every time we'd go there, they would feed us and have this Syrian coffee on a little platter that they had brought all the way from Syria. So that's been a huge blessing. Put us to shame in the way they show hospitality.
Dorcas, same question to you. Just a time when you've been blessed with hospitality.
About 4 years ago, my dad had cancer, and so we were in Virginia visiting, and we thought he was doing pretty good. We thought he was going to last a couple more weeks anyway. And all of a sudden, Friday night during the night, he just took a bad turn. And all of a sudden, my family was coming in some of them from out of state, and people were dropping in to visit local people, and they brought food. They just went and bought frozen pizza and brought that, or frozen, it wasn't all homemade. Some of it was just from the grocery store. But that meant so much to me, just because all of a sudden I was kind of there and had to figure out how to feed people. And just having this food here, it didn't have to be fancy. It was just there, and that just meant so much to me.
That's awesome. And one more person on that, a time when you've received a blessing loyal. I'm sorry, you've been blessed by an act of hospitality.
This is another family. When we moved Serenity out to Indiana, Dorcas has a cousin that works at Echoes, and anyhow, we stayed at her house. She was busy with work, but she gave us the full run of her house. Her basement is furnished, so we had her basement. Serenity could come there and be with us. But just her extending herself, her and her husband's extending their dwelling to us, just blessed Dorcas and I, because we were kind of at an emotional, oh dear, I'm going to cry, at an emotional, crazy, whatever, leaving Serenity there and coming home. But just the way Kathy just, she gave us her house. And then on Sunday, she invited all her kids and their spouses for lunch for a birthday dinner. And Dorcas and I had taken in Virginia we call them morels, but they're mushrooms. Anyhow, so we were a part of the dinner and creating and helping it. But just the way Phil and Kathy opened their home, their hearts to us, just was a blessing to Dorcas at a kind of an emotional low time for us.
And you could say at that point it was a deep need of yours. That was
Yes,
met.
yes, indeed.
All right. So in 1 Timothy, it talks about a lady's ability to show hospitality and what that looks like. In Titus, it talks about a man's hospitality. I was curious to the audience, who do you think is more gifted in hospitality, a man or a woman? If you think a woman is more gifted, raise your hand. How about men? Okay, so we have a overwhelming majority. What you said, women? Okay, good. We have an overwhelming majority saying ladies are, but in Titus 1 it talks about a man's hospitality. Before I go to the question, I just want to say, you guys know my dad. He had the gift of hospitality. Within 10 seconds, he could make anybody feel comfortable. That's a big gift. So I strive to be like my dad in this area because he's given me an incredible example. So, panelists, and I'm going to start with Jeremy here. What do you see as some ways that guys show hospitality?
So I think of my dad when I think of a man showing hospitality. In the first minute that somebody walks into their house, they'll get a hug and just a welcome. And then, he also loves to serve coffee. And
Tim Horton?
Yep, absolutely, 100%. And then he also has a what is it called? A milk frother that he really likes to use as well. So, but there is something about when the head of a household, when you feel welcomed by the head of a household, that can make you feel relaxed in a way that a woman I don't think can. So
it's good. I had this question designated for Abby. Ann, do you want to share what do you see as a woman's hospitality? And that's putting you on the spot, but.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously the woman's role in hospitality, a lot of times when we think of having people in our home, is taking care of the food. And it's really hard to balance taking care of the food and also helping people feel welcome. I don't multitask very well, and so if I'm working on food, it's really hard for me to engage in conversation. So, I mean, I definitely think that they have a huge part in setting the atmosphere of comfortability, and even people offering to help, letting them help and not just trying to take it all on themselves. I feel like that can really help people feel at home and a part of the family there and the home.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That leads us right into our next question for Loyal and Dorcas. So when you guys have somebody over, how do you split responsibilities? How do you make this flow and make your house a warm, cozy, incredible experience for everybody?
We work together a lot.
Yeah.
We're often in the kitchen together, and we have a lot of fun cooking together. But then sometimes Loyal doesn't like to wash dishes. So often he actually cooks, and I do the dishes, and I clean the house and set the table. But it doesn't have to be that way. I would say whatever works for you all. But we do a lot of cooking together.
I will say this for the men, you're not off the hook when it comes to hospitality. You may not know how to cook, but you can prep vegetables. I think every man knows how to hold a potato peeler and peel carrots and potatoes. And if you don't know how to do that, you know how to run a vacuum sweeper. You can vacuum the floors for her, sweep and mop. You know what? Yeah, there is just piles of stuff that you can do. And you can prep vegetables for salads. You're just my focal point. And, you know, so much as sweeping off the deck, taking out garbage, there, you know, that's a lot of stuff you can do. If you're going to have a campfire, get the the wood that you use. So yeah, you're not exempt. It doesn't hurt for a man to be in the kitchen, working right alongside of his wife. Yeah.
Just to comment on that, I said my dad was great at hospitality. He never washed it. I say never. He did one time. My dad washed dishes one time in his life. He had appendicitis, so he was in the house with his mom. And he was getting buggy. His mom made him wash dishes, and he actually threw up. He's never washed dishes. He never washed dishes the rest of his life. But he was gifted in hospitality. There's more that you can do, even if you're not gifted in an area. Loyal, again, back to you. How would you encourage I know there's something that's on your heart. How would you want to encourage our congregation to have people in their houses just to fellowship more together?
First of all, hospitality does not have to be fancy. It doesn't have to look glamorous. You don't even have to use your glassware. It can be done with styrofoam and paper plates and whatever. But I like to look at hospitality as using my house as a vessel or a place to bring people into your home where they can, where they feel that they matter, that they're important. Yeah, and like I said, you don't have to keep up with the Joneses. You don't have to. That's not what hospitality is about. It's about bringing your heart, you know, serving out of a heart of love for people, and a lot of times that is getting out of your comfort box, out of your comfort zone. One thing that Dorcas and I like, and maybe this is because it's I don't know if it's a passion, but I feel, and maybe this is more me, I feel like there's two groups of people that get missed in our church. It's the older singles and the elder. And somehow, and those are the kind of people that Dorcas and I like to invite into our home to make them feel like they are somebody. So to encourage you to reach out to, in the thing of hospitality, I like to put myself in how I want to be served, or how I want to be, how I want to be received when I'm someplace.
This next question is from Mark. So when you're host family, this is my experience, it is a struggle to get 3 or 4 couples to come back to your house sometimes because, you go to one and you have this all planned. I got 15 seats at the table, and I got to calculate 3 here and 2 there, and then that 3 people left. How do you guys decide how do you get people to your house when you're host family? I would have loved to hear Abby's answer too, but.
Yeah. I'll try to combine the two. So we just did this a month ago, and most of the people we invited are here this morning. So, that's a tough one. I didn't like this question, to be honest with you. So normally, Abby likes to plan ahead and text some people, because I think the host thing is set up so that, you know, if we have some visitors, you can invite them over so they have a place to go. That Sunday there wasn't visitors, so it was just people from church. Oh, there were some visitors there, but they had plans. So we asked a bunch, and they all came. I think we kind of ran out of food. Maybe they didn't even know that. But so it felt a little chaotic, not gonna lie. But hospitality is okay with chaos, I guess. So how do we decide? That's a hard question to answer because it's kind of a struggle. Because I want to, with this host family thing, I was thinking maybe this question is how we host other people too. I didn't know if it was just church, but as far as like host family, so I'm going to put a little plug in here because I made that announcement that Abby is, trying to figure out host families for this next year. So I think we have 7 people that would be willing to host people in their home. 4 of them are the pastoral team. So I guess we have a little bit of work to do as a church on hosting people. So maybe we could have a little discussion around why it's scary. I don't know if I want to tell you my reasons, but I'd love to hear other people. I barely answered your question.
That's all right. Anybody have a comment for him?
Just a plug for the host family thing. If you live far away from here, you don't have to entertain at your house. You can have lunch at church and invite a few families. It's not quite as personal as it being at home, but you can still be the host and have a good time here as well.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else respond? He's in desperate need of a comment. Yeah.
I didn't know when the deadline was. And also, I remember seeing a message that Abby had sent, and I couldn't find it. I didn't know where it was. Was it on the WhatsApp chat? Somewhere. Okay. But no, I definitely want to fill out the thing because we love hosting. So
Okay.
don't diss us.
No, I'm not. Like, it is that's a hard. Yeah, it can be hard. It's Sunday afternoon. We have 4 kids, so by the time you get home, and we live 45 minutes away. So when we get home, I'm tired. They're tired. And sometimes when you get ready in the morning, the dust is still settling by the time you get to church. So if you have kids, you know how it is. But I want to tell a little story. I remember soon after we started coming here to Life, Loyal and Dorcas, you guys hosted us. I guess you were hosts because it was us and 4 older people from the area. And I had a blast. I got to know Loyal, and I got to know 4 older people that were incredibly funny. Older people are great. But I just want to say, like having people into your home, like for me, my personality, I'm an introvert, so it's a little scary. I would have loved to back out a month ago when it was our turn. We tried to come up with some excuses, and it didn't fly. So I'm just saying, at the end of it, I was glad. We have people. So I want to talk about hosting just a little bit. Sorry. The way we decide how to host when we're not host family is, and I'm going to go back to my wife. She's amazing at this, but she has a list either in her phone or in her head of people that she wants to have over. And so on Sunday mornings, on that Sunday morning a month ago, some of the people that were on the list that we wanted to have over, we had that Sunday. So that's how we decide. People that we have wanted to invite into our home. People have blessed us, and we get to bless them in return.
And you guys should feel privileged. You're in Abby's black book. All right, we're going to move on to the next section, hospitality with strangers. The verse here I have is, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in." Dorcas, this question is more about visitors coming to church. Actually, no, I'm not going to include it at visitors at church. What are some specific ways that you can make a stranger or a visitor feel welcome in your home?
I think Jeremy alluded to this earlier, but just meeting them at the door and being excited that they're there, that's something, that we try to do. And just not being so encumbered with serving that you have time to interact. I try to plan ahead and do as much as I can ahead of time so that it's ready when people come. And occasionally people will ask, "Hey, can I bring something?" And sometimes if I feel like they really mean it, I'll let them bring it. I think it makes them feel welcome or included. And even when people get there, if they ask what they can help with, give them something to do. And but just something, we've had some non-Christian people in our homes on different occasions, and they've just talked about how they just felt such peace at our house. And yeah, just creating a calm atmosphere and just having the love of Jesus in the home. I think that makes a big difference.
Mhm. Jeremy, Ange, you guys have hosted this refugee family. Jeremy, give me your biggest challenge, not a blessing, a challenge from hosting this family.
The biggest challenge, I'd say, with hosting them specifically has been the language barrier, having to do everything through a Google Translate. It's hard to have motivation to host when it takes so much energy to have a conversation with them. And it's just like, it doesn't feel very natural or flowing when you have to speak into a phone and then give it to them and then they speak it. Or, yeah.
That makes sense.
So I'd say that's been the biggest thing. And then also just prioritizing time for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. So, Ange, opposite question, what's been the biggest blessing of hosting the family?
Like Jeremy already mentioned, being hosted by them, it feels like they've done more hosting than what we have. And just feeling at home in their home to a certain extent. Like it's very much of a, they do all the work and you just sit, like they don't let you do anything. But also this has turned into a blessing. Watching trust being built, I feel like as trust has been built, they have allowed me to, like when we've been over there for meals, they would always make us just go sit down after we were done eating, and then they would clean up. But more recently, she has allowed me to like help carry the food into the kitchen and put away leftovers. And I really feel like that has shown me that she trusts me and that she feels safe with me. And so watching that progression has been really, really good.
That's good. So, I don't know how many of you people out there, when you first came to life, if you remember a conversation, probably not, Doug alluded to this morning, but you remember how somebody made you feel. Loyal, you have met a lot of people for the first contact when people came into our church has been you a lot of times. Just tell me how you do it, man. How do you connect with a visitor that's coming in?
Oh boy. Part of that, it's who I am. And I think about my only hobby is people. I used to have chickens, but but I love people, and when I see somebody come in, well, growing up, my dad was a preacher, and we visited a lot of churches. And I vowed when I ever became an adult, if I don't have to visit churches, I won't, because we've been in some churches where there's some pretty stuck-up people that...
Be nice, we're in church.
It's just true.
Okay.
And I also decided that if I'm ever in a position where I can receive people, I want them to feel at home. And to me, there's no better place than to make somebody feel welcome than at church. I don't know. I've been to churches where I didn't know where the restrooms were, and that can be frightening. And depends on your state of life, I guess, maybe. But even inviting, just welcoming them and introducing yourself, and I'm really funny about this. When somebody introduces themselves to me and they just give me their first name, I just feel like it's not complete. Maybe they don't have a last name, I don't know. But I like to introduce myself, and as Galen already said, I'm George McPherson. And but I don't know, I like to introduce my full name, and especially at church, I like to know that we do have restrooms and that kind of thing. And maybe that's not important, but it is to me. And I don't know, but I think ultimately I want people to feel welcomed. And if they're in search of a place, I just think we have the best place to offer.
Good. So, Mark, your hobby is not people. How do you make people feel welcome? That's a stranger coming in.
Yeah, so I think about ways that I've been welcomed. And so something that I've been working on, like if there's new people here in churches, you walk up to them, you greet them, ask them what their name is, and then something to like start a conversation. You can ask them what brought them to life, like what brought them to church that morning. And then here's another little story for you. So the reason I think about that a lot is, I'm going to keep the details pretty vague, but I was visiting a church with some family. So we were there with them. This was their church. And I think we had like 3 or 4 people come up and talk to us. And I thought about that. I was like, wow, it's like I did not feel welcomed. It actually felt really strange to me. I just kind of like stood there with the family we were visiting. And I thought about it later that I've done that here at Life Fellowship, because I'll see somebody come in, like say Loyal comes in and he has family with him. Then I might not go say hi to them because they should feel welcome. They came with Loyal, right? But that's not true, because I still need to go out and welcome them to church, even if they came with somebody who attends at church. That's something that I've thought about ever since I experienced that. Like even if somebody comes into church with somebody that attends at church, you still go and introduce. And so maybe that's because I'm young. It's a new concept to me. Maybe some of the older people have done that for years, but I just want to challenge you guys with that. Like that's how, like anybody who comes in, you make them feel welcome.
So you're saying just finding out their names doesn't always make them feel welcome?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I ask, I usually have a couple questions in my head that I can ask them to like spur some conversation.
Yeah. So Ange, you came to our congregation a number of years ago, but you didn't live here. You were from South Carolina, Virginia, right? So, I've been a great host. I don't even know where she comes from. Tell me a little bit about your experience coming here and how that spurs you to greet visitors now.
So moving here was a really, really hard adjustment. And I think maybe kind of what Mark said, like I was with Jeremy, and so, because he's what brought me here. And so Sundays were really hard, if I'm honest. Feeling welcome and yeah. But I feel like it took me a while to try to make a difference in the way that I connected with people. I don't know if it was because adjusting was so hard that I felt like the new person for so long. But I feel like in the last year, I have had more energy and more capacity to invite new people or to welcome new people and to take an interest and initiate conversation with them. But I feel like I'm still a work in progress in wanting to give them a different experience than why I had. And it's not like I had a terrible experience. It just, I think I hid in his shadow a little bit more than what I would have if I would have just come alone. Yeah.
That's good. So yeah, just it's something to keep in mind. Thanks for sharing. We're gonna move on to the next section, hospitality in a crisis. The verse I have here says, "Then Jesus said to his host, 'When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back and you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, the people in a crisis.'" So Mark, this question's for you. I've seen you minister to someone in grief, and I know your mom also passed too. and more than likely you receive hospitality in that situation. Just take me into that. How do you show hospitality in a season of grief?
Yeah, so how do you reach out to someone in grief? Number one, you just do it. That can be a really scary thing, especially like we're talking about grief. So I'm and you mentioned death, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So yeah, number one, you just do it. It can be really scary, especially if you haven't experienced it close to you. Like, what do you say? And you actually don't need to say a lot. Some things you don't say is you don't talk. Like, I'm talking to the men here because like probably two of our biggest conversation starters is weather and work. And when you've experienced grief, you could care less about the weather, and work does not matter. You're not even looking forward to going back to work. There's bigger things in life that you've experienced. So how do you reach out to someone in grief? I would say just do it. If you thought about them, probably the Holy Spirit prompting you, just reach out. And one of the ways that blessed me was when people would ask for memories about Mom. Because when you're experiencing grief, that's what you're thinking about, the person that you lost, and so you would love to think about them more and think about the memories you had, that kind of stuff. So that's a good way. If you don't know what to talk about, you can talk about the memories. But yeah, don't talk about the weather and don't talk about the work, because it's very uncaring, actually, for what someone is going through at that time.
Jeremy, this question's for you. What does hospitality do to a person that has been uprooted from everything?
Grounding is the word that I came to mind. Like, it feels like it grounds something. So I was thinking about this in the perspective of the refugee family, but then I was also thinking about when I was in Mexico, the first month that I lived there, they stick you in a village where nobody speaks any English so that you can learn the culture and the language. And so in some ways I felt like I'd been pretty uprooted. And just the hospitality of the family that I lived with, even though I couldn't even hardly communicate with them, there was like a grounding that happened, or that, yeah. So then I think about the refugee family moving here, giving them a community as soon as they get here, and knowing that they have people around them right away.
If you heard that word, grounded, that's the root of hospitality right there. Because when people are in crisis, they need grounded. Dorcas, in a crisis or natural disaster or something that comes up, how do you help in that type of situation?
I haven't done a lot of just going away for a week and helping in a disaster, but in the community, some years ago, there was a neighbor lady that she was a hoarder, and plus she had lots of cats. That's not a good combination. So we helped her clean her house out. I mean, like, totally clean it out. And it took several days, and it was awful, yeah. But that meant a lot to her, that people that she barely even knew just came together. It was a bunch of us came together and just helped her clean her house out. And so just reaching your neighbors, the people in South Carolina, it can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be something big and glamorous, but just being willing to help. And think about your skills. Can you cook? Can you run a shovel? What can you do that would help the people around you?
Mm-hmm. Mark, same question.
Yeah, so for myself, the way I've helped, it's kind of like the grief thing, just do it, just go. There's lots of different places. When I was younger, we went down to Alabama, I forget where all we went, but a couple different places we went for weeks. One time, soon after we were married, it was 3 couples we went down to Alabama for a week and helped do cleanup, and then after that we went to Florida for another week. But that was a great that was a great time. Like we have lots of memories, and we still, that was 15 years ago. We still tell stories about that week that we spent in Alabama. We were cleaning up after some bad weather. I forget, tornado maybe. But often when we're talking about hospitality, we're blessing people. But a lot of these stories that I think of, I have that blessing for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you help in a natural disaster? You just do it. You just kind of like grief. You just, if you feel prompted, you go. You speak up, you share.
Good words. All right, we're going to move to our last section. We're running short on time. So hospitality to those in need. And the verse I have here, is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter, when you see the naked to clothe them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? I'm going to go right back to you, Mark. How do you balance busy seasons of life and being open and hospitable in your home? I'm thinking about, you guys have been through a tremendously busy season. There hasn't been a lot of down or rest time. How do you balance that with hospitality?
Yeah, so number one, how do you balance that? So he said busy season. So if you are busy all the time, so let me back up a little bit. If you have a busy season, you should have a slow season. I believe that you should be equally as slow as you were busy. If you're busy all the time, then that's a life pattern. That's not a season. So how do you balance it in a season? Like you might need to pull back a little bit and change. Like if you're busy with one thing, it's going to take away from something else. And if it's for a season, that's okay. If it's your pattern of life, then you should probably reevaluate.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that answers
That's
that.
that more than answers my question. That's excellent. This question's for anybody, and you can just raise your hand if you want to share first. How do you think our church should make a difference in this area of poverty? I don't know if you guys know this or not, but poverty is around us, and it's not really getting better. Like, it's happening a lot. There's a lot of single moms. There's a lot of people that are going to struggle with mortgages. How do we? And I know all the things you can say. Well, they got themselves into this mess. But when Jesus met the woman at the well, when Jesus met the woman in adultery, he didn't say, "Oh, she got herself into this mess. Let her get herself out." Right? How do we deal with poverty? Go ahead.
When I read that question, the first person that came into my mind, some of you here, excuse me, won't remember him, but Javier, I don't know how many of you remember Javier. He was an example of somebody that was not in a box as we see people. He was poor, he didn't always dress nice, and he didn't always smell nice. But I've often wondered, have we showed him Jesus like we should have? That man had a heart for Jesus. Did he do it like we did? Absolutely not. He had a passion for doll heads. But somehow I could see past that. And since he's moved to Florida, I've often wondered, did we show him Jesus? Yeah. That's a question I've often had. And it's an example that I often think of showing hospitality to somebody in need. I've had quite a few conversations with him, and I don't know. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Anybody else want to share on that question? All right, we're going to take, we have time for 2 or 3 questions from the audience. Anybody have a question to ask our panelists here real quick? I shouldn't say real quick, then you won't ask a question. Anybody? Go ahead.
the host family thing's obviously probably first for visitors, but we're one of them families that lives 40 plus minutes from here. It's probably for visitors first, but would there be anything wrong with if there's not visitors here that are connected to particular families to have your people you host from church on Sunday evening instead of Sunday lunch? That would make it simpler for a family.
So his question was, what about inviting to supper instead of lunch? Any thoughts?
Travis, I think that'd be a great idea. I think, so this host thing is set up for visitors, but then it's also a way to have church interact. Whenever you interact outside of this building is great, but whenever you interact outside of this building, you get to know people in a different way. So having somebody over in the evening is perfect.
Right. Yeah. So his thought was, I don't care when you do it. If you do it, you're going to get closer to people. So, one other question. If not, that's fine too. Okay, where are we at?
So I'm wondering, as someone that doesn't have a house or a place that I can share without my parents' consent, how do I, in this season of life, be hospitable to others if I don't have a space that I can share as openly as I could if I had a house?
All right, who's gonna tackle that one?
Evelyn, that's a good question. But I would like even just meeting people at church, even if they're not in your age group, just going up, especially to visitors or even other people in church, just get to know them, ask them questions. But you can also take them out for coffee or something like that. That would be a few ideas.
All right. Well, we are about to wrap up our panel, but before we do that, I would like you guys just to share one thing that you would love our congregation to hold on to as they walk out today. And Jeremy, we're going to start with your side.
So I think, in thinking about the verse when a scribe asked Jesus what the most important commandment is, and he said to love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. I don't think there's anything more practical than hospitality to show that. And thinking about like Sam and Kathy and Matt and Ian and how they showed hospitality to Kayla Brown, and essentially that's why she knows Jesus. I think this is a very, very effective tool in spreading the gospel.
That's good.
Don't wait for the perfect house, or simplicity is key. I feel like the times that I have felt the most at home and the most welcome was when, for instance, in Myanmar, when I walked into these houses that had dirt floor and you sit on the floor, or you're just given rice and a couple of pieces of chicken, and just feeling like one of them, and they had nothing whatsoever to prove. And that has really spoken volumes to me in the way that I went to host, and the way that I encourage you all to host is, like Mark said, just do it. Even if you don't have a perfect house, or you think that you have everything that you need to offer to them, just doing it is huge.
Dallas, what you shared this morning with the illustration with the rope, that's what I think hospitality is. You know, you said we know just a little bit about someone's life. So hospitality is inviting someone into your house or into any space, or meeting them where they're at and getting to know more of them. And that's, you're being Jesus. That's being Jesus when you're meeting them in that area.
Yep.
I think my takeaway for hospitality is, whether it's in your home or whether hospitality can be where you're at. And this is a little bit of a story. most of you know that our business is going to the post, or dealing with mail. Anyhow, for a couple years in a row, we invited our hospital, post office friends out to our house for an evening, and that has made an impact on all of them. And the one in particular, she said she never ever thought much about Jesus until she met us. So my thing with hospitality is bring your heart and just bring a piece of Jesus with you.
Good.
I would kind of echo what Ange said, to keep it simple. It doesn't have to be a gourmet meal. It doesn't have to, your house doesn't have to be perfect. It's just they're coming because they want to be with you. And just make it so that they feel welcome, but not fancy.
My closing comment echoes what Jeremy said earlier about being grounded. You know, when people are in a crisis, when people come to church as a visitor, all they want to do is be seen, heard, and grounded. And that's really important in this area of hospitality. That's our panel. Can you guys give them all a big hand?
Mark, you stole my thunder. I was going to reference Dallas's opening of learning to know more of the rope. And if you guys weren't here to hear that, go and ask him, and he'll be willing to tell you. So I forgot one thing. There's a boy turning 13 who doesn't want sung to this morning, but we're going to sing to him. Brady turns 13, so we're going to sing happy birthday to Braden. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Braden. Happy birthday to you. You always remember this morning when you didn't want to be sung to. Just a reminder of our prayer team. If you want someone to pray with you after church, James and Sherlyn, Anthony and Abby, Novella, and Irvin and Martha, who are not here, will be willing to pray with you this morning. So a couple of prayer requests in closing. Remember Irvin and Martha, Sam and Kathy. They're on their trip. And then Irvin's going to go to be with the Muslim background believers for a leadership conference November 3 through 8. So remember them. Also, Rendell and Clarin and Nyla. Remember their baby in prayer for healing for her. Also, Serenity and Coleman. And also, Morgan's grandfather passed away, so he lost both grandfathers in 1 year. So remember them as well. Let's stand together for a closing prayer. Father, it's been good to be in the house of the Lord, to worship together, to share together, and to laugh together as we think about hospitality and how you want us to interact with people and learn to know them and to lead them to Jesus. And I pray that be each of our hearts this morning. To lead us in that area, Lord, and how you want us to minister in hospitality. So this morning we lift up Rendell and Clarin and Nyla. Lord, I pray for healing for her and give Rendell and Clarin wisdom and care for their hearts in these tender moments. Think also of Morgan and losing another grandfather, to be with that family and care for them as well. And Serenity with her ankle and Coleman in his foot, Lord, you are the great physician, so we ask you to do your work in their lives. Lead us, Lord, in all we do, and may we honor you with our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. You're dismissed.